Hey everybody, Mike Verta. So, I firmly believe that we should embrace technology. And as musicians, especially, it's a practical consideration. It's part of working in the world today. The issue that we face is that our technology has elevated choice over competency, almost at the expense of it. So, like when we have our virtual libraries now, we could do so many more things. There's so many more instruments. They have all these different instruments and all these different options within the instruments that we can use and all the different plugins that we can buy to change them. And so we spend all of our time working all of the options. And yet none of these things are fundamentally making us better musicians. If we can't write a good melody that connects with people on a piano or on a fucking recorder or whistle it, then all the plugins, all of them in the whole world, all the computers will not get us there. And that's a really important truth to keep in mind as we figure out what we're going to do with our day. What are we going to do with our skill set? As we get trapped in this thing where we buy more stuff and buy more stuff and think that's increasing our competence. It's not. It's giving us more choices. And pretty soon that becomes all we do is we learn more plugins, we learn more technology, but we're not getting any better. And this has happened across a lot of different fields in nonlinear editing, like for editing films. In the early days of Avid or Final Cut Pro, we realized right away that those tools were great if you already knew how to edit, but otherwise they robbed you of some very important skills. Like, for example, when you originally had to edit on film, it was a big fucking deal to edit on film. You'd have to take the film and you'd have to figure out exactly the right frame. You'd have to work it out, first of all, to figure out exactly where the cut's going to be and how many frames it's going to be, what the time's going to be. Then you got to take it into the edit bay where you're literally chopping the film. If you're real nervous because you can't, like, if it's gone. So, and we do it on a Moviola or on a Steenbeck or something. So, you'd take it and you'd have to cut it and you'd have to put tape or glue and then you'd have to check it. And it was a big fucking deal to make an edit. And as a result, because of just the amount of work of it, a lot of things had to happen before you did the edit. Like, you had to be real sure about it. You had to think about it. You had to really take your time because it was going to be so much of an effort to do it, and to undo it is even worse. So it would force you to be really, really present in your creative work. You're thinking really carefully about what you're doing. And you are double checking the technical aspects of your work because it's going to be a problem to do. And you're staying in the vibe of it. And the other thing is that because it takes a amount of time and you got a whole film to edit or a whole bunch of stuff to edit, you have to make a choice. You have to go with your instincts and you have to learn to get to your good decisions and good ideas quickly, because otherwise there's not enough time to do the whole movie's worth of edits. You can't just, let's try it like this and try it like this and try it like this and try it. There is none of that time. You got to make a decision. So it would often force you to go with your first creative instincts, which are often your best ones. So survival skills is working in that, you learned to harness your instincts. You learned to be conscientious and careful about the decisions that you were making because the price for failure was high. And as a result, that's a really great way to train. It hones you into a finely tuned editing instrument. And if you take that person who knows how to edit and you put them in front of a nonlinear editor, well, it's great. It's like, oh, this is way better. Now I can just edit like this. But that person already knows how to edit. If you don't know how to edit, and now you're sitting in front of a nonlinear editor, there's no price for failure. And you don't have to learn to go with your first instincts because, well, you don't like it, just Control Z or Control Z or no, how about like this? Or we could do it like this, or we could do it like this. And that actually robs you of the skill of having to know when it's right so that you can move on and be able to count on that decision later. Now you don't really know. And plus now, other people can come in and have the expectation that it can change forever. And a lot of times in edits, just like in long-form pieces of music, one thing informs things that come later. It sets a style or a pace or a tone. And if at some point somebody goes, let's just go all and change it, then it starts to become this cat chasing its tail. And it doesn't have as much, it doesn't plant its anchors creatively as strongly. And that's true, and this is true in making films. Now they do this thing when we shoot films, you'll see it's called the no-look look. And that the idea is that they just shoot the images sort of neutral, and then we'll just do all the color later in post, as though it's the same as lighting your set with colored gels, and it's not. But that's one of the reasons that there's this expectation like, well, it doesn't really have to look like anything in front of the camera. We're just going to make it all look something later and resolve. We're just going to power window everybody's faces and make their eyes bluer and teal and amber everywhere. And we're just going to do it. It's all going to be made later, which means that also then people can then just turn it into anything later. Oh, what if they had a red scarf or whatever? And it goes on and on and on. And it's not getting better for it. It's just all of the choices have taken over for competence. It's totally different to know the skill and then have a tool which helps you use that skill more efficiently than to not have the skill and get trapped in the options paralysis of technology. There's nobody who can set these limitations for us except ourselves. We have to make a discipline about it, but it's crucial. Because otherwise you'll spend all day in the technology. You can get lost in it, and it's fun. And what's worse is when in an entire industry, if everybody's competence is going down, and what's unifying them is the tools, then it starts to become a tail wagging the dog. The tools start to decide the competence. So what happens? So because right now, if you're a composer and you don't know how to do a certain device, but you can push a button on the keyboard and it makes that sound, you're not in control of that. It's in control of you. You just have to, because if you don't have that, you don't know what to do. So, but now you've got that. Well, now you've got a whole bunch of people who don't really know what to do, and everybody's using the tools. Now that becomes the standard, the expectation bar, the aesthetic standard, the competence standard. Because there isn't competence, there's only the tools. And it actually brings the whole thing down. Our whole industry starts to suffer for it. So we have to make a decision consciously as artists to go and figure out where can I get my raw skills. As musicians, that's very easy. You limit yourself. You limit. Creatives love limitations. They hate them, but they're good for us. So if you give yourself, I'm going to do one instrument, but I'm going to write a good tune for one instrument. A good tune, you probably whistle and get in people's heads. Certainly can recognize it. So we're wise to limit ourselves to a small number of instruments, a small amount of choices, few choices rather than more. Otherwise, we just get caught up in the technology grinder. And and this ripples out into other aspects of our lives. It's like spell check. Great. Spell check is great if you know how to spell, because if you don't, then the tool owns you. And then even more sort of sinisterly, then the people who make the tool decide how you can express yourself. Now it gets real creepy. Now we're getting into something Orwellian. Well, I can't actually speak or write. It's normally the computer that does all that for me. Okay, well, we're taking away your computer. That end user license agreement you signed. Yeah, we've changed all the terms of that. Now you can't write competently. You can't function without us. It's a very, why are billionaires concerned about the AI that they're helping to develop? It's because they notice that we seem to be willing to just turn things over to computers very quickly. It's not a substitute for having the competence and the skill. It's great if you know how to spell. But then you haven't given up any of your power. You have the power, and you're just using a tool to help you realize it more. Versus I don't have the power, and the tool is the substitute for it. So it's just a thing to keep in mind that there's no right or wrong. There's no amount or we don't have to be Luddites, and we got to embrace the technology, but make it work for us. Make it work for us by keeping it a tool. And it's a tool when we have the skills. We could do it without you. Don't need you. Not dependent on you. You're useful to me. You help me. It's making my job easier, but I know my job. I can do my job without you. That's power. That's what we're in danger of giving up every day as individuals, creatively and maybe in other aspects of our life. So as we're tempted by the newest and greatest thing, and there's always a newest and greatest, especially in music and VSTs, there's always some new technology that's great and sexy. When those things happen, we always have the burden to ask ourselves, is this going to increase my real skills? Or is this going to take the place of my real skills? Anyway, something to think about.